This is Johnny with Tiger Bomb MMA, and today I'm going over UFC on ABC 5. Emmett versus Topuria, giving my thoughts and predictions on the whole card. 14 bouts, a lot of them really not worth going into too much detail into. So I'm going to try to spend maybe like 2 minutes max kind of breaking these down, give you my thoughts on them. Overall predictions on the card, I think it's going to be pretty fun. There's a couple fights on there that are very solid, a couple underdogs that I like. Hopefully they're still underdogs because last I checked, I don't know if Tapology is giving me some bullshit or what's going on, but I check one night and there's a certain underdog plus 200 or so. Next night it's a damn near pick 'em, so I don't know what the hell is going on here. But before I break down this card, I wanted to give you my thoughts kind of quickly on the Vettori versus Cannonier fight and the card itself. Did pretty well. Only got two predictions officially wrong. I did pick Ronnie Lawrence to win, but I don't know. I don't even know what to go into about that one, but I'll start off with Bukowskis winning a decision. It was like 30-27, 29-28. I didn't really agree with the 30-27. I thought it was close. First round was close in the sense that Baunga did enough to win the half of the first round. And then I thought that Bukowskis did enough to win the second portion of the first round. So it's like really up to the judge what they thought was more significant. I would have valued more the strikes that Bukowskis landed, but it wasn't particularly like a robbery in my eyes, nor was it like crazy if Paunga would have won that fight. So it's like it is what it is. Yeah, Lawrence looked like he was tapping, man. Like to me, I don't blame what's his name, Cigarette Boy, because he was like fake tapping, almost like air Brazilian tapping. So it is what it is. I understand the whole situation of like he pulled his hand, it made an actual tap, and they stopped the fight. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like it would have been nice if they would have restarted it, but Daniel Argueta looked pretty damn good. I liked his ability to actually go for that submission and feel confident enough to actually hold on to it. And I think he would have gotten the tap. Teresa Bleda wins via decision against Gabriela Fernandez. I found it kind of funny. Like I was kind of rooting for the people who had tickets on Fernandez by third round TKO. And I'm like, oh, there it is. And then no, she fumbles the bag and gets taken down and loses the fight. So it is what it is. I had Carlos Fernandez. I bet him, I think half a unit. I was frankly, I was kind of a pussy this card because I wasn't feeling it. You know what I mean? Like I had won some money on Bellator betting pure chalk, and surprisingly it cashed, and I made a decent amount of money, like enough to kind of feel comfortable after taking an ass whooping in UFC 289, where I lost a ton of money on Blake Builder like a moron. So I'm like, don't fall into that same trap. So I bet a little bit on Hernandez, whipped the shit out of Bondar. Yeah, Bondar is never going to be the same. And funny enough, I also bet Kyung Ho Kang. I had a parlay with Hernandez, Kang, and the over 1.5 on the Modestas fight. So that cashed. I geeked the hell out when Kang knocked out / choked out Quinones. He knocked him out, then he choked him out, which was like perfect because I'm like, Christian Quinones is kind of a fraud. For him to be kind of that significant of a favorite versus a guy just as big as him and technically better than him, that was kind of crazy. So glad those cashed. Costa beats the crap out of Jimmy Flick. Nothing really to say there. I thought Jimmy was going to put up more of a fight. I still think he needs to, if they give him another fight in the UFC, give him someone not with that much firepower, not someone bigger than him. Just I feel for Jimmy, right? I want him to succeed just because, like, I don't know what's going on in his life, him retiring, coming back. I kind of want to see the guy succeed, but they're not giving him any easy fights. So hopefully they give him a good fight, a winnable fight. Nicholas Dalby defeats Muslim Salikov. That's one of the fights that I got wrong. Dalby keeps doing his thing. I can't really hate on him as much as I like get annoyed by him continuously winning against guys he shouldn't be beating. Manuel Torres defeats Mota. Not much to really say there. I thought Mota was going to look like the better striker, which he was. Didn't matter. An elbow to the face is going to make the better fighter, get knocked out. And that's what happened here. Pat Sabatini defeats Lucas. He destroyed Lucas Almeida. I thought Lucas was going to win. I had another parlay with basically all the underdogs that cashed for me. So I had Armin to win as well. I had a half a unit on him, which cashed easily. And I had Lucas Almeida on the final leg of that parlay to make like $400 on like $5 or something. And I don't know what happened with him. Like I thought he was going to do a bit more. I thought he was going to be a little bit more crazy, kind of force the fight to Pat Sabatini. But credit to Sabatini, he wasn't taking any chances. And we knew Sabatini is really good on the ground, and he really proved it there. So in a weird way, I'm kind of happy to see Sabatini back because I think he is a solid prospect. It just kind of sucked that Almeida, I don't want to say he didn't try, but he just didn't have the opportunity to show off anything. Like I was hoping he'd just go ballistic in that second round when it started. Petrosian defeats Christian Leroy Duncan. Duncan, I felt as if he's still good. And just in that spot, I thought it was a poor, really a poor performance by him. Like it almost seemed like his athleticism and his tricks, his bag of tricks didn't work on a guy as experienced as Petrosian. And I actually kept talking about like, oh, if I can find the line of Petrosian getting a takedown, I would take it. I couldn't find it. The casino that I went to wasn't offering it. And lo and behold, he got a takedown. Just the one, which is, it is what it is. But Petrosian showed he was measured, and in certain spots, you got to know when to pick certain guys. Like Christian Leroy Duncan, realistically, going up against another good striker, I'm like, yeah, give me the more experienced striker that can actually stuff takedowns. Duncan, the worst thing I can say about him is that in the first round, when I don't know if he tried to spin, but he kind of presented his buttocks to Petrosian in a pretty close first round, and then Petrosian kicks him in the ass in the last few seconds. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, you can't do that kind of stuff. Like, you may have won that round on maybe one or two of the judges' scorecards, but you getting kicked in the ass isn't a good visual. So that's kind of one thing that kind of made me wonder, like, in the future, maybe Duncan's not a guy I want to bet. Sarukian defeats Silva. Not really much to talk there. Like, for me, Silva's stock went up. Arman's stock kind of went down a little bit, mainly because he couldn't finish a guy he really realistically should have finished in like the first two rounds, finished him in the third. And him getting rocked by Silva, it's not really like, oh my God, I can't believe he got rocked by a scrub. Silva's a good fighter. It's just kind of like, you can't look like that as a minus 1200 and then call out like, I want to be the next in line for a title. Like, nah, it ain't gonna happen that way. Like, had he finished him immediately, yeah, you can call for the title, like no question there. But like, just him talking too much is bothering me. And then Jared Cannonier defeats Marvin Vettori. I was gonna place some money on Cannonier. I just kind of chickened out, and frankly, I'm kind of happy I didn't, just because that first round would have deterred me, and I would have been like, oh shit, I'm gonna lose. Despite that, Cannonier looked incredible afterwards, putting on like a striking clinic on Vettori, and Vettori showed his absolute toughness. I realistically thought he was going to get knocked out in this fight. I'm like, there's a good chance. And I mean, there were certain that he could have been stopped. Had it not been the main event, I think it could have been stopped by certain referees. But yeah, great on Cannonier. I mean, there's a chance he might get another title shot either here soon, depending on what happens with Dricus and Robert Whitaker. I mean, the worst case scenario that goes to a draw, they might just give it to Cannonier again. But we'll see what happens there. But let's get started with this particular matchup here, Emmett versus Topuria. Let's take a look at the first fight of the night at middleweight. Cody Brundage versus Idikris Dumas, the Reaper versus, I don't know if he has a nickname, Mr. Amanda Bobby Cooper. Minus 125 for Brundage. Come back on Dumas is plus 105. So realistically, Brundage should win this one. He's shown enough skill to really implement a good wrestling style, even knock out or hurt Dumas. Dumas got hurt by, what's his name? Josh Fremd in that fight. I still believe, like, I'm not going to be one of these guys that, despite Dumas losing his debut, that I'm like, oh, he's a piece of shit now. Like, people tend to do that. I'm not going to do that, just because I think everything that I said about him previously is true. He's very athletic. He's got skill. It's just that he doesn't have enough skill to meet his athleticism. His athleticism's here, his skill's kind of down here. Like, he's shown some promise, it's just not catching up with him, mainly because either he's had too easy opposition, where he's the guy doing majority of the grappling, so when he's fighting better grapplers, it's kind of like, oh shit. Like, it really seems to me he's like the guy that is super athletic, goes into a jiu-jitsu class as a white belt and has success against like blue belts and purple belts, because he's just so like weird and lanky and athletic. He's got like almost 80-inch reach. So yeah, he can have some success. And then when he's fighting guys that are like, hey, you ain't going to fuck with me in the mat or on the feet, like, oh, okay, I see what a real good striker is or a real good grappler is. And in Cody Brundage's case, I think he's a solid grappler. He's a solid striker. He just makes a lot of mistakes. And for him to be a favorite here, I don't think he's the guy to bet. I keep saying I don't think he is the guy. And I will say this, Brundage, each time we see him, he's making little slight better improvements in his striking and his grappling, but he keeps making the same sort of mistakes. Like a guy that goes for a guillotine on Rodolfo Vieira, granted, he's got balls to do it, but like, you're not going to get it, right? You're not going to get it. He's seeing it coming, and he put himself in a bad spot. And I worry he'll put himself in a bad spot here. Realistically, Brundage should win. I'm going to back Dumas on this one, mainly because I think, despite the fact that his skill set doesn't quite match Brundage's, his overall package, I think in that short amount of time between training, he can make larger leaps that can either catch up to Brundage enough to beat him or to surpass him. And it is what it is with these like athletic dudes. Like, he's only 27 years old. They're both young, but I think Dumas has a very good chance here to actually get a finish, whether it be by submission or by knockout on the feet. I think he just has to stuff a few takedowns, and I think Cody's probably going to break a little bit. He tends to kind of panic too much when he's not having his way, and he tends to fold. So I'll go with Dumas here. I'm not interested in betting it. I'll go with Dumas by a finish in the first round. I think that's his best shot. I mean, if Dumas's takedown defense has significantly improved, I think he's going to have his way with Cody, and that's really it. I don't think that Cody's going to have so much success on the feet. He can if Dumas tends to like feel himself too much. I remember when he got beat by Fremd. I'm taking too much time here, but he's like, we'll meet again. I'm like, no, we won't. Fremd is like, we won't meet again, you idiot. Like, I beat your ass thoroughly. Just shit like that. He's a little delusional. But let's move on. Taira versus Clayton Rodriguez. Taira's too big of a favorite. Minus 375. Come back on. Rodriguez is a plus 280. I will say Rodriguez here, pretty good spot if you want to take a shot on the plus 280. If he is still plus 280, let me take a look. Yeah, plus 250. There's a certain fight that kind of bummed me out. I'm like, am I going nuts? Am I seeing the odds off? But Taira, very good on the ground. I think he's got a really good chance here to break Rodriguez. Rodriguez is solid on the feet, decent enough wrestler, good on the ground. I think he's a solid total package to be in the UFC. Very solid flyweight. But when you got a guy that's a solid, almost like an ace on the ground like Taira, it's really tough to go against a guy like that. Like, I think he is a rightful favorite. I don't think he should be nearly minus 400, though. I think this will be his toughest test on the feet. If Clayton could really put it on him, attack the body, and really kind of test Taira's mental state on the feet against a guy that's kind of barrage him. And that's what Clayton has to do, avoid the takedown and go after it. He has to make this line closer. Whether it hits, say, the second round, it should be potentially a pick 'em or even a slight favorite for Taira because of what Clayton was doing in that first round, if it even makes it that way. I do think Taira is a very composed gentleman. He's 23 years old. He's not bad on the feet. He has a pretty solid, I believe it's a solid long right hand. It's just we really haven't seen much of his striking, and I think we will see it here against Clayton. He's a solid guy. I think he can stuff takedowns, and if it stays on the feet, he's going to have some success. Not necessarily a major success. I think Taira's not really going to get too deterred. It just comes down to if Taira survives a barrage, and if he gets it to the ground, I really do think Clayton might just mentally break. I see Clayton as a guy who is kind of a bully fighter. When he's having his way and everything's going his way, easy peasy, he'll whip your ass. He'll make it look super easy. But when there's a resistance there, I saw it with CJ. CJ hurt him to the body, and we saw how he panicked. And I feel like if he makes a panicky decision here against Taira, Taira's going to take advantage because he is everything on the ground. Like, I've been impressed by him. I've tried to fade him in certain spots, but I can't really find a guy that can beat him. I think it might come eventually, but right now I think he keeps that O. He'll be 14-0 by the end of this one. I'll say I think he actually has a really good chance to finish Rodriguez with strikes. I think once he gets on top of him, I think he's going to batter him because I feel like Clayton has a little bit of quit in him, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm going to go with the round number 3 TKO for Taira. I think it's going to be his toughest fight, hence me not wanting to take him as a parlay piece or anything. I might just go inside the distance for Taira if I do bet it. I'm just not really a fan of betting him at this major chalk line, so I'll skip this one. Jamal Emmers versus Jack Jenkins. See, this one, I thought Emmers was an underdog. I thought he was at one point plus 145, but he's actually minus 170. Plus 145 is Jack Jenkins. So I'm assuming that perhaps Tapology might have flipped the lines. Let me take a look. Yeah, because I don't think Emmers was ever a dog. That sucks. I got super hyped about it. I like Emmers in this spot. but not betting him as a favorite. I like him as an underdog. And the reason for him being, I think, the favorite, he kind of showed himself against the Ashbov, where he was able to stuff takedowns. He looked a little bit more composed. And that really showed a maturity in the guy. Like, I've always thought Emmers is a solid fighter, good wrestler, good long striker. He's gonna have a 6-inch reach advantage here, and he should be able to use it. It's just that he's kind of known to have a pretty poor fight IQ, like going for things you should not be going for. Pat Sabatini heel hook. It still bums me out to this day. Like, I am in San Diego, in I forget the name of the city, whatever beach city it was on in San Diego, and I'm watching this dude fight on my phone, and I got money on Emmers. Like, he's gonna beat Sabatini. He's gonna whip his ass. Whips his ass, goes for a heel hook. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And so little things like that I don't forget. So I understand the pain. It's just that in this particular fight, the only real issue that Jack Jenkins, not necessarily that Jack, but Emmers has to be weary of is Jack Jenkins' leg kicks. He kicks ridiculously hard, and Emmers has kind of some Bambi legs. But if Emmers can maybe time a shot well off that leg kick, because Jack Jenkins, he throws some combinations, but he does tend to throw those leg kicks naked just because not many people can stop him. Even if they get checked, it hurts guys. Like, he's breaking legs with these things. I don't think he's going to be able to hurt Emmers with his hands. Like, he's going to be a little too small against Emmers. So I think he has to implement a solid leg kicking strategy immediately. And then the other thing about Jack Jenkins is that he typically fights his best when he's using grappling. I don't think he's going to have the grappling edge here. I think Emmers will. And another thing is, I like Jack. I bet him at chalk against Don Shanis. I didn't. Fucking hell. I was judging an event, right? And during the break of that MMA event, I'm watching that fight with the fellow judge next to me, and I'm like, dude, I got money on Jack Jenkins, and the dude is in full mount by Don Shanis, and I'm freaking out because I have to put my phone away because the next fight's about to start in like a minute, and I'm like, oh my fucking God, really? Turns out he wins the fight by a decision, but you should not be going to a decision with Don Shanis. That alone is like, I'm going with Emmers, but unfortunately, because I do think Emmers is better as an underdog, I'm not betting Emmers in this spot. I think he can knock him out in the first 2 rounds because I think Jack, although he's a solid fighter, he gets a little hit too much. And you know what? I think Emmers has a really good shot here to get a submission as well. Straight up pick, I'm going with Emmers. He can probably get it done in a variety of different ways. Just kind of randomly going to pick submission around number 2. I'm not confident in that particular pick. If Jack Jenkins wins, again, it's going to be via leg kicks. Like, I didn't like the way Emmers took those leg kicks from Ashbov. And realistically, if Ashbov would have continued throwing those kicks, I think he would have had a lot of success. He was kicking them pretty hard. He was kind of spinning them around. But yeah, we'll see. It's an interesting fight. I'm interested to watch it, but not really interested in betting it at this point. This particular fight, I think the odds are bullshit. Trevor Peek versus Chepe Mariscal. Allegedly minus 200 for Trevor Peek. Come back on Mariscal plus 170, but fight odds has it a pick'em now. What the hell? It was a pick'em literally moments ago, and it kind of seemed to go back to reality. So I don't know what's going on with these odds, but realistically, I think Chepe at plus 170 is a pretty solid pick. I have to go with Mariscal by submission in, say, round number 2 or 3. The reason for it, he's a solid fighter. He's beaten some solid guys. He beat Pat Sabatini. For me, it looked like he beat Bryce Mitchell back in the day, but they went to Bryce Mitchell. He's lost to some really good guys. You know, he also beat Yusuf Salal. So he's beaten UFC caliber guys. Issues that he's a 145er. So when I say he's a solid play, and I might actually take a little bit of shot on him, kind of like what I call my pride bets. Like, I want to put my money where my mouth is. Like picking Mariscal is probably not the wisest thing. Trevor Peek, you know, style-wise, skill-wise, not the best, but he hits hard. He finds a way. He perseveres. I call him the methamphetamine because it looks like he's on meth, and he's from Alabama, and he's a meanie. And the issue with Peek, despite his lack of skill, like, he did mention that with that $50,000 bonus that he got from tomahawking that Mexican guy, Ghost Pepper Gonzalez, or whatever the fuck his name is. I have it right here. Why am I even bothering? Yeah, Gonzalez. He's been able to train kind of consistently. So the thing with Peek, he hits hard, I like his mentality, man. He doesn't quit, which is like it's a good not being a bitch is the best space for MMA, and he's not a bitch. My issue with him is that again, he gives up his back too much, gives up takedowns too easily. Chepe is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. He's got a judo background. He's fought really good competition. He's got the dog in him as well, but he gets dropped too damn much for my liking. So it's a really risky bet. It's just that if you're willing to take a shot on a guy who is technically much better than Trevor Peek, but there's risk in him getting cracked, you stay away from it if you're not interested in like taking that shot. But for me, I do think that if Chepe can like withstand the punches, and realistically, man, those punches that Peek was throwing against Gonzalez, they should have been defended pretty easily. It's just that Gonzalez was just almost there to take a dive. I think Chepe's got decent enough head movement. I think he can push a pace, get takedowns. If he can take the back of Trevor Peek, I think he can find a submission, a rear naked choke. It's going to be tough, but in this particular case, like I keep mentioning, Peek, like he's got good get-ups in the sense that like they're not technical. He just literally gets up, just like Black Beast. So I think it's a good spot. I don't think a lot of people might be considering betting Mariscal in this spot just because he is a 45er moving up to short notice fight Trevor Peek. Kind of looks like Cody Durden a little bit, Mexican Cody Durden. So that's good enough for me. So I'll go with Chepe by a second round submission on this particular fight. So moving on, Zhumagulov versus Joshua Van. Zhumagulov minus 175. Van is a plus 150. I did some tape watch on Van. Solid fighter. Maybe a little too early to be in the UFC. I think Zhumagulov wins this one either by decision or any really way he wants it. Joshua, his only chance to win this fight is to finish Zhumagulov. I don't think he can win a decision. I think Zhumagulov is going to have too much output. Joshua's solid, man. He's very solid, but he's only 21 years old. He hasn't fought really anybody, and he's really making a short notice debut here. I did fade Zhumagulov twice with his last two opponents, which was, I think, Bunes. I was going to put some money on Bunes, and there was another guy that pulled out as well. Let me take a look. Rafael Estevam. Who the fuck is Estevam? He sounds familiar. Nah, I wouldn't have bet Estevam. Fuck that. Bunes, I thought, would have beat him. He's just long enough, good enough, tall enough, strikey enough, jiu-jitsu-y enough to beat him. I thought he would have finished him. I don't think Joshua Van has the length to really give Zhumagulov much issue. They're going to be the same height, unless it says here he's 5'5", Joshua Van. If he turns out to be like 5'8", and we don't know about it, then that might change things. I think taller guys really give Zhumagulov not necessarily issues, but visual issues with the judges. Like someone long enough, Zhumagulov might kind of leap in too much, maybe not necessarily hit cleanly. And in this particular case, with Joshua Van being just his size, I think he won't have those issues here. So I'll go with Zhumagulov by decision. Next bout, Tabitha Ricci versus Jillian Robertson. No interest in this fight. Ricci minus 125, Robertson plus 100. There's a lot of talk about, they're both black belts. Technically, I think Tabitha's the better jiu-jitsu practitioner. I think she's just cleaner. Jillian, I'll give her respect. I'm not a fan of Jillian Robertson, but she's a solid fighter. It's just I've always had my issues with her when she can't get it to the ground. She's just a fish out of water. I don't know if she can get Tabitha to the ground. I think Tabitha's solid. It's just that she's super boring. I don't think she's showing off what she's capable of. I think she's getting by beating these girls by the bare minimum. And she tends to have the same game plan, like get a takedown, get on top a little bit, kick the legs from the top position. And I would hate for that to happen because I think Jillian is capable of falling into that same trap. But I also think Jillian is big enough to maybe give Tabitha some issues by maybe taking her back. Like just because someone is a solid, better, quote unquote, black belt doesn't mean that they're not capable of getting choked out. Like Jillian is big. I don't know how big she's going to actually look. It's listed here at 5'5", and I know Tabitha Baby Shark Ricci is kind of short at 5'1", but I think Tabitha Ricci is probably going to be the better striker here, more elusive, kind of avoiding the takedowns, maybe getting takedowns of her own. I'm going to go with Ricci by a decision here. I feel as if Robertson gives up takedowns a little too easily to Brazilians. I don't know what it is about it, but yeah, I always say when she doesn't have the striking edge or she doesn't have a clear-cut advantage on the ground, she tends to lose. And I don't know if she's going to have a huge advantage on the ground. I mean, if she just kind of like uses her weight to bully her. Like, she is dropping down. She dropped down already from 125 to 155 or 115. I'm sorry, and she looked okay against Piera Rodriguez. But I don't think it was as dominant as I would like to have seen, despite her getting that armbar, for me to feel like she's going to come in here and beat Tabitha. So I'll go with Tabitha, kind of using her little mousiness outside the cage, or not outside the cage, but on the outside of the cage, kind of frustrating Robertson, ducking in for takedowns, and just winning based off of like just control time. Next bout we've got at lightweight, Mateus. I like his nickname, Rębecki versus Loic Radzhabov. This one's kind of a mirror matchup. They're both solid strikers with power. I think Radzhabov is a better technical striker as opposed to Rębecki here, who is like a Polish Haley Joel Osment, as I call him, and I'll keep calling him that until he catches on. He kind of just seems to throw power punches in his way to getting a takedown. My issue with Rębecki here as a minus 125 favorite is that I didn't like the way he looked against Nick Fiore. Granted, Fiore was tough, but we all expected him to get a finish. And the fact that he was kind of getting pieced up on the feet by Fiore, I mean, call it what you will, but when I see a guy getting kind of battered, his eye was bloody, I call that getting pieced up, even though he was having the more success on the feet. Loic, I think he's a solid guy. For him to be an underdog here, I think it might be potentially easy money. And I say potentially because there could be a shot here with Rębecki throwing a shot that catches Loic off guard and maybe dazes him, where he might try to shoot for a takedown, where Rębecki would then counter and get on top. That's what I worry the most about. That like a big shot from Mateus might actually hurt Radzhabov early, and then he ends up losing like a really bad decision where he just couldn't recover from it. Realistically, though, I think Radzhabov is just the cleaner striker. He's going to be the bigger guy. I think he's fought the better competition. It's Killcliff versus American Top Team. I'm going with Killcliff on this one. I think he's a solid dog. It's a 50-50 matchup in my eyes, with a slight lean going to Radzhabov. So I'm going to go with Radzhabov if he's still a dog. Let me take a look. Yeah, he's kind of gotten to a plus 110. So I don't know what people are seeing in Rębecki. Like, I kind of get it, but I think with this matchup, it's a little too close for him to be a favorite. It should be a pick'em in my eyes. It might, I don't know. I like Radzhabov here. I'm willing to take a shot on him. So I'll go Radzhabov by decision. Next bout, welterweight bout. We've got Wellington Turman dropping from middleweight to welterweight, which I think is a good thing, against Randy Rude Boy Brown. Randy Brown being minus 250 is kind of ridiculous. Is he still minus 250? Roughly. You can probably get Wellington Turman. It's listed here on Tapology at plus 205, but I think he's like plus 185. I like Turman here mainly for the reason that I think he's just going to be too skilled for Randy. I don't think Randy is the guy people think he is. He can get some good wins, but he's 32 years old. I wouldn't call him a prospect anymore. I think we got the full product of the guy. He's kind of chinny. He tends to duck his head too much when he's throwing strikes. He gets too complacent. He gets too full of himself. And I don't think he's shown any sort of true dominance in the cage for him to be minus 250. Minus 250 tells me that he's going to come out here and knock out Wellington Turman. And I don't see that happening. Like, Turman's been training with full-time retired Glover Teixeira. So his jiu-jitsu, we know Turman's jiu-jitsu is kind of like pretty good. Like, it's pretty fucking solid. Like him getting arm bars on like Misha Serkinov from the bottom position, just kind of sneaking it up on there. I think he's got a really good chance here to get a finish, primarily a submission. I think Turman, his last fight against, what the hell was his name? Petrosky, kind of showed him like, hey, these guys are just too big. They're not outskilling me. They're just out powering me. And he's 6 foot tall, 72-inch reach. He's going to have a 6-inch reach disadvantage. I don't think it's going to matter. I think Turman's going to use his middleweight strength at welterweight, take down Randy Brown, take his back, submit him, possibly get an arm bar, because those long arms, they might snap. You're not going to have the full dexterity of an extended arm when it's like that long and you got a guy like Turman on it. So I'll go with Turman. I think he's going to get a submission either in the first or second round. I think he's a good shot here. It just depends if he makes weight. Like, I'm looking at him on Instagram, and he seems to be kind of the same. He doesn't look like he's changed. Doesn't look completely ripped. So maybe he was just fighting at welterweight, not cutting weight. I have no idea. But we'll see what happens in this matchup. If he makes weight easily, I think I'm going to take maybe a unit shot on Wellington Turman. Moving on, we've got Neil Magney versus Phil Rowe. Is this the prelim main? Yeah, it is. So very simply put, the minus 150 on Neil Magney, I think it's pretty good. Come back on Phil Rowe plus 120. I like Phil a lot. I really do. I like his jiu-jitsu. I like his striking. I don't like the way he uses his reach, though. Like, he's got a 80.5-inch reach. He doesn't really use it effectively. I don't know what it is about the guy. Like, I always say, let your hands go, Phil, and you can get knockouts. But he doesn't seem to let his hands go effectively. Like, I feel as if Neil Magney uses his reach more effectively, like long range strikes, poking and prodding. Too much output. I think he's going to have the wrestling advantage, not necessarily the submission advantage or the grappling advantage. I think Phil Rowe is a very, very good grappler. But when it comes to position, Neil Magney is the guy. He's the guy that you kind of go to get a decision win. And I think he wins this one by decision as well. I don't think he's going to be able to finish Phil. I think Phil's tough. Phil's going to have good submission defense. And Neil Magney's just going to do what Neil Magney does. He's going to poke and prod. He might get hurt. He might lose the first round because Phil's been ever progressing, getting takedowns of his own. I just feel as if there's too many people in this division so far that have been able to control Phil Rowe. Like Orion Kosuke was able to control him against the cage for long periods of time. Granted, he's a wrestler, but Jason Witt took him down and kind of controlled him a little bit. It's just that those two guys don't have what Magney has, which is a decent enough chin and excellent cardio. And I think that cardio that he weaponizes is going to be the real defining factor here, with the reach advantage being so minimal for Phil Rowe and him used to having that huge advantage. I think Neil Magney is just going to kind of pick him apart little by little and then get a pretty easy minimum 29-28 decision. This bout here, middleweight main card opener, Brendan All-In Allen versus Bruno Blindado Silva. So I've got issues with this fight, right? So it is, Brendan Allen is a favorite here, minus 165. I wonder if he's blown up a little bit. He's calmed down a little bit. So there's some money coming in on Blindado. Blindado is plus 140. So the issue that I have with Brendan Allen here, I feel as if he should win this fight relatively easily because it is essentially another matchup for Bruno Silva that he lost, which is the GM3 fight. I think Brendan Allen is just like a younger, slightly better version of GM3. I think GM3 throws good kicks. Brendan Allen has good kicks. I think Brendan Allen's striking's developed better. They both have kind of shitty chins. The jiu-jitsu is kind of maxed out where they can get submissions out of nowhere. They can submit guys that you wouldn't expect to submit. I mean, Brendan Allen submitted Andre Muniz, and that was like a shock to me. Like, I thought he could win, but I didn't know if he was going to be able to submit him, and him submitting him was like, damn. Like, Brendan's making those proper adjustments, but the issue that I have with Brendan is that he can find himself in a spot like this where he should win. He essentially has to literally copy the game plan of a guy that beat him, the game plan of a guy that I think he is literally the same but better than. But I still think he can lose, mainly because he kind of gets a little too ahead of himself. Like Bruno in his last fight, he cashed out for me. I had some many units on the guy. I believed in him against Brad Tavares, but I was sweating it, man, just because he was getting hit a little too much. He was getting out volumed. He just looked too slow. The thing that I did like about Bruno is that he kind of weighted the counter perfectly. Like, I don't know if he was just kind of waiting, if that was the game plan, or if he just saw something in that exchange with Brad Tavares, but like he ended up knocking him out, which was like, hooray, woo, baby, it literally put me far above where I could make as many mistakes as I wanted, like in the next cards, and I'd still be fine. That's how ecstatic I was. But with Bruno, he looked too slow in that matchup. I just felt as if yes, he's got the power. Yes, he's got the skill. I just think that a guy like Brendan right now should just be able to pick him apart on the outside and take him down. My issue again with Brendan is, as a favorite, I can't trust him as a favorite. I really can't. I don't want to pick Silva because I truly do believe Allen wins this one by a finish on the ground. My issue again with Brendan Allen is that he could be piecing up Bruno, making him look so slow, I know he's only 33, but making him look old, like he's just a husk of his former self, like GM3 did. Even if Bruno comes in here looking good, like even like six pack, doesn't look drained out in the weigh-ins, he could still make him look that way. But Brendan might go in there, try to throw a jab to the body, like a long jab to the body, and then Bruno just clips him with a goofy uppercut because he didn't see it coming and he got a little too overexcited. Brendan, that is. So that kind of reasoning is like why I don't want anything to do with this fight. I rather enjoy it because I am rooting for Bruno to win this fight. I'm a big fan of Bruno. Mainly, obviously, catch me some money, but he gets knockouts. He comes back. He went toe to toe with Alex Pereira and survived that left hook. Like that's just mythical stuff. And then he gets finished by GM3, which is like, what the fuck? So I have to go. So my reasoning here is I want Silva to win. So I'm going to go with Brendan Allen to win this one by a submission in the third round, right? I think, again, if Brendan, there's a saying in Spanish, I don't know if it's like a Mexican saying, but it's like ponte las pilas, like put on your batteries, meaning that like if you act right and you do things right, good things are going to come and you'll progress in life, whatever. If Brendan can put on his pilas, he should win this one. But I'm kind of hoping it puts him in reverse and he gets knocked the fuck out. So I'll go with Brendan Allen to win this one. Submission in the third round. I'm rooting for Bruno. I think despite him looking kind of crappy his last fight, I do think he has that ability to find that opening where Brendan's just going to be like, I'm winning this fight easily. Allow me to throw a flying knee. Bam. Gets knocked out. That's why I don't really like betting Brendan. Like if he's a big underdog or a dog itself, good. You know, he's more than likely going to get that finish. But as a favorite, I feel like there's something about him as a favorite where he's just like, let me go out here and pull a stunt for the world to see. So I'll stay away from it, but I'll go with Allen by third round submission, if you know what I mean. Next bout, really good fight. I'm really looking forward to this one. David Onama versus Gabriel Santos. Plus 190 on on Onama. Santos is a minus 240. So automatically, because I do think this fight's going to be really close, where it might go to a decision. More than likely, if Santos wins, it's going to go to a decision, but I think he might have to go through a lot of fire to get to that decision. I don't think he's worth parlaying. I don't think he's worth betting at minus 240. I think it's Onama all day if you're going to take a shot. The main reason is that like Onama should not be this big of a dog, right? Like he was the featherweight darling a fight ago, like a guy he should have knocked out in Nate Landwehr, which realistically he did knock him out, and then he just woke him back up, and then humidity got to him. And he ended up losing that fight by a decision. What I liked about that performance is that he showed a good jab. He showed more composure to him. It's just that he kind of fell off that cliff, which was both a positive and a negative. Had he had won that fight, I think it would have been a huge learning lesson for the guy. Like, hey, you know, kind of pace yourself, make sure you get your cardio in check. That way you don't have to fight like that again. But the fact that we saw him fight so gritty and go after it, even though he was exhausted, was like, damn, this guy's really got something in him. And I wrote down here in my notes that I do feel as if Onama he's a very good template for a solid featherweight fighter, featherweight or lightweight fighter. He's got good wrestling, good grappling, nasty power, but there's little things there that I need him to clean up, which would be his striking. I think his striking's getting better, but he doesn't have a whole ton of like variety. It's just mainly like boxing, not many kicks. He doesn't really mix in his takedowns with his striking. I think he's either in striking mode or in grappling mode, which I'm not a huge fan of guys that do that. I think guys that flow well into the striking from the grappling and vice versa, I think they do better. And hopefully, because he's training at a Factory X, they can kind of work with him on that. For that particular reason, that's why I kind of think that Gabriel Santos is a much better fighter, skill for skill, than Onama. Like he can wrestle, he can grapple. He's not going to be a better wrestler than Onama. I think he's going to be a better jiu-jitsu fighter than Onama. I think he strikes better. The issue with Santos is his striking defense pisses me off because he leaves himself open to get hit. Like his offense is solid, like attacks the body well, like left hook to the body, right leg kick. He attacks the head well, but his hands don't seem to come back enough for him to defend shots. And he was getting kind of pieced up a little bit by Lerone Murphy. Like he was attacking Lerone would then counter and then pop his head back. And I'm like, that ain't good, man. That ain't good for me. I don't think he's going to have the grappling advantage. More so, I think that if Santos wins, he's going to have to put more output out for him to beat Onama. I think Onama can be hittable. I think a slick striker, which I do semi put Gabriel Santos under. He's kind of slick because he's quick. He's quick enough to kind of avoid things. I think if he can sharpen up his defense enough, he could have some success here. Like, he made a short notice bout, so I don't want to take too much away from him in that fight that some people say he won against Lerone Murphy. But I've seen him get dropped in other fights, and he's come back. And I don't want to see Gabriel Santos, a minus 240, have to come back from getting hurt, especially by David Onama. And him having a 2-3 inch reach advantage over Santos, I think Onama, if he's smart enough to pump out the jab, throw some kicks of his own, threaten a takedown, maybe come up with an uppercut like a Chad Mendes style, like duck under uppercut, throw more variety that's not as predictable, I think Gabriel Santos could have some trouble there. And I think he can get caught by Onama and put him out, or at least compromise him enough to lead him to get his ass beat for the majority of the fight for him to lose the decision. I'm going to have to go with Onama here as a dog. I like him in this spot. Like, as much as I do think Santos on paper is better, it just really takes that X factor being the ridiculous power, the reach, and the additional like unknown of how Onama's going to look from Factory X. Like, Factory X did kind of make Julian Marquez look pretty damn good with his offense in that Marc-Andre Barrio fight, but his cardio didn't catch up with him. I think David Onama has got a better chance to clean up his cardio issues, like to have more output. And if he can do so here, I think he's going to have a good night against Gabriel Santos. So I'm going to go round number 1, Onama by knockout. I am hoping to God that I see the proper adjustments from Onama in the opening round. Like, he's stopping the leg kicks, he's blocking them correctly. I do like his jab. I just want to see a little bit more variety to the body, more kicks, and then just kind of confuse Santos enough that he's going to make that mistake. Because Santos, for sure, he's going to go back and rewatch that Murphy fight and be like, I'm getting hit too much. I got to tighten up my boxing, my defense. I need Onama to kind of trick Santos a little bit into thinking that he might be like trying to wrestle, and then just whack him, crack him. So I'll go with Onama by a first round knockout. I do like those odds quite a bit. That's kind of my main factor, because I think it should be a little closer. And by a little, I mean a lot closer. It should be maybe Santos like minus 150. But yeah, I'll go with Onama by knockout. Next bout, Justin Tafa versus Austin Lane. Heavyweight bout, Tafa minus 180, Lane plus 150. Realistically, man, I don't think Austin Lane belongs in the UFC at all. He can get a knockout here. He's a long guy, 6-inch reach advantage. I'm sorry, it's not a 6-inch. Yeah, it is 6-inch reach advantage. Also a 6-inch height advantage over Justin Tafa. And my justification for picking Tafa by knockout in the first round isn't that Austin Lane has been knocked out in the past before. It's just that I just don't think Austin Lane belongs in the UFC. I think he's more of a heavyweight that can get knockouts for sure. Obviously, he's gotten knockouts before. I just think he's more of a pressure guy. I can't really explain it. I only watched 3 of his fights, and I can't even explain his fighting style. I just don't think he's built for heavyweight. Let's just say that. I think they're going to hit too hard. I think he can beat some guys at heavyweight just using his length. But my justification was that Austin Lane, to me, doesn't belong in the UFC. At least at heavyweight. Maybe light heavyweight would be significantly better for him, just because they're not going to hit him as hard as Justin Tafa is going to hit him. And for me, Justin Tafa himself, I never really thought of him as like a UFC caliber fighter, but I feel as if he's finally developed enough to kind of keep his spot in the UFC, where he kind of developed into a UFC fighter where he can stay and get some solid wins. And in this particular fight, he's fighting Austin Lane. I think he's going to eventually catch the chin of Lane. Yeah, I'm going to go with round number 1, Tafa knockout. This fight, co-main event, Amanda Ribas versus Maycee Barber. Interesting bout. Ribas is minus 175. Comeback on Barber is plus 145. So realistically, like to make it quick, Ribas is better everywhere. But when I keep mentioning X factors, Maycee Barber has certain factors to her that just make her kind of difficult to beat sometimes. I don't know if it's like the judges liking her so much. I don't know if it's her like amazing smile or her. I don't know. I got nothing. But when it comes to Macy Barber, her X factor is that she's too dumb to quit. Like she's too dumb to realize that she's not as skilled. And that sounds harsh. I guess the better way I can put it is that like what's a nice way to put it? That she doesn't know her own limitations. That's the best way I can put it. And because of that, she's willing to do things and kind of put herself in a spot where she's going to try. Like, I got to give it to her in that fight with Andrea Lee. She got taken down and she somehow managed to get some solid damage off on Andrea Lee from her back. Little things like that. Like, she seems to have the Nico Price energy towards her where she just kind of goes and does. And sometimes it works out for her and sometimes she doesn't win. Lately, though, she's on a 4-fight winning streak. She's beaten Miranda Maverick, for God's sake. Like, say what you want. That's a good name on your record. Jessica Ai, decent name in Andrea Lee. Like, going back and watching the Andrea Lee fight, like, oh boy, I hate to admit it because I was pissed when Andrea Lee lost. I had money on her. But realistically, Barber did get off more damage, so I can't hate on it. With Ribas, I keep mentioning better grappler, better jiu-jitsu, better striker. Chin sucks. I don't like how often she gets hit. Yeah, she moved up to flyweight. She hasn't really gotten too hurt. But in this matchup, plus 145 on Barber seems so tempting because she is so big and she is so imposing. And I think with her kind of bum rushing style, her inability to know that there's danger afoot in Ribas, because Ribas is a good striker. She's got pop in her punches, good knees, good clinch, good submission game. I don't think Barber's going to care. If Barber goes out there and just does her thing and kind of bullies Ribas around, I think she can get her out of there. Not necessarily knock her out clean, because I think at 125, Ribas' chin is going to be better. I think it's going to be enough to rock her, kind of make her stumble a little bit and get a TKO against the cage. So as much as I love Ribas and I think she can win, definitely, I think if Barber lets Ribas get into her rhythm, I think Barber's going to lose. I think she's going to be swinging at air. But first round Barber is good. Third round Barber is also good. So I'll give that credit to PayPal My Money, who reminded me that Macy Barber in the third round, that Kamikaze Barber goes after it if she is losing this fight. So for me, I'm going to go with Barber TKO round number 1. At plus 145, she's going to be the bigger girl, as I mentioned. She's very physically imposing at that weight class. Like, even though she's not huge, she is like, oh shit, you better just stay away, because like she throws a punch from like a mile away, but you feel the wind hit you, and you're like, yeah, let me stay away from her. So I think even Macy could win a decision if Ribas is just like, I don't want to face that power, and she's just kind of like poking and prodding from the outside, and Macy's just kind of like the Barber barrage. Yeah, that works. The Barber barrage. Get her the win here. Main event here, Josh Emmett versus Ilia Topuria. I don't know what CCO stands for. Cock chugging something. I don't know. El Matador Ilia Topuria. So the odds, I hate the odds. Minus 335 for Topuria comeback on Emmett is a very nice, solid 250. So I'll say it off the bat. As much as I'm the CCO for Ilia Topuria, the cock chugging operative for Ilia Topuria, the plus 250 I think is a very good price on Emmett here. You're never going to get that price on Emmett again, whether he, say, loses this fight, or he retires. Like, I don't think you're ever going to get that price on Emmett. So I think it's worth a shot to take him just as a bet. Oh, boy. But when it comes to this matchup, so I broke it down. I watched tape, and I'm not a guy that goes back and watches every single bit of tape on guys. Like, oh, back in 2017, Ilia Topuria got taken down and he got controlled for half a round. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about that at all. Like, certain times, like, the mistakes of the past aren't going to rear their heads again, but the mistakes of, like, say, a few fights ago are probably going to still be there, because certain fighters, despite the improvements that they made, whether it be the striking, the grappling defense, they tend to make and revert back to like their old styles. Like, say, if you are defending an an arm bar, and then you're so good at pulling it out, but you got a guy that knows you're going to pull it out, so he can adjust properly and you get caught, that kind of stuff. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but when I see Ilia Topuria and Josh Emmett fight, I have to give Ilia Topuria the better boxing, the better combination striking, But Ilya is kind of known to kind of get frustrated sometimes and whiff overhand rights and get out of position and put himself in a bad spot, especially when he's fighting guys that are not going away as easily and they aren't giving him, I guess, the front foot when they're putting him, either pushing him back or meeting him in the center. Josh Emmett's going to be that guy. The thing with Emmett is that he also has that issue where he kind of whiffs punches. So I don't think Emmett is all that great when it comes to like his boxing, right? And I always like to differentiate between a good striker and an effective striker. And I think Josh Emmett is a little bit of both, but it leans more as an effective striker in the sense that I don't think his technique is like something you want to emulate. I think his technique is solid just for him, being that he's like a very explosive guy, even at 38 years old, covers distance ridiculously. So if Ilya is not used to that speed, if he's not prepared for it, I think he can have some trouble where Josh could really like pick him apart early with like hard jabs and then maybe eventually find that overhand right, which to me, I think that overhand right is very predictable, which bothers me the most about Emmett. Like you can see it coming because that's all he has, that and going for takedowns. And this, I don't know if the takedowns are going to negate each other because, you know, Ilya is a very good wrestler, more so Greco-Roman, Josh more traditional freestyle. The jiu-jitsu, the grappling, the submission grappling is going to have to go to Ilya Topuria. Josh Emmett does have, obviously, the alpha male guillotine, which I've never really seen him pull off, but to say that he can't get it on Topuria is a little silly as well. Like, he can hurt Topuria. Topuria kind of ducks for a takedown, gets caught. What, to me, would stand out is I think that Ilya can make the better adjustments, being the younger guy, to see that overhand right coming. And he has to be composed here. This is his first main event in the UFC, which that itself being like another factor where if he's not fighting that way, if he's kind of in the first round kind of throwing recklessly, and granted having success against Emmett, who is a tough guy, he's not going to get put away that easily in the first round. I would worry that having a ticket on Topuria at any point would kind of start looking less favorable for me, because if Topuria kind of gasses himself trying to get Josh Emmett out of there, Josh Emmett is tough. He can come back. He's been 5 rounds, and he can find his way into a knockout because Ilya's been dropped before. So I keep bringing this up that I think Ilya is the better striker conceptually. I think he's cleaner. He hits the body beautifully. I think he trains his boxing with like intensity. Like he talks about how Canelo's one of his favorite fighters, and he technically tries to emulate the guy. But again, Emmett, in an MMA fight, he covers distance so damn well that he's just so damn sneaky. And I've seen the guy getting outboxed, but he finds a way to land that punch. I've seen him get dropped. I've seen him get hurt. To me, though, the reason why I'm like, damn, Emmett's a really good spot here is like, even in that loss to Rodriguez where he's getting his ass beat, and I had Rodriguez to beat his ass, I was hoping Emmett would catch him. He cracked him hard. He didn't necessarily drop him, but he stumbled him, and it gave me hope. Like, Josh is not a guy you should ever count out. And that's why I'm like, this is the biggest test for Ilya Topuria, for him to be minus 330. Even though I chug his cock all day, it's a little ridiculous. It should be lined a little bit closer. Like, realistically, again, like, I do believe that Ilya in this fight, he's fighting a guy similar stature. He has to respect Emmett. Like, he's been fighting certain guys, like even Bryce Mitchell, he fought him without respect, and Mitchell was landing on him. And that's what worries me here. Like, if this fucking guy who's known to have a huge ego comes in here with that ego, which is like, I like the guy, but that is a big flaw about him. He fights with an ego, and if he fights with an ego against Josh Emmett, he's going to be waking up in the back asking like what year it is. Like, he's going to be speaking Georgian instead of Spanish. Is Georgian a language? Whatever language they speak in Georgia. But yeah, man, like I do think that Topuria has the ability to see that overhand right coming, defend properly, and I think he's going to put on better combinations on Josh Emmett. Like, fuck, man. It's tough for me to give a real prediction on it because Ilya really has to have made those adjustments. He's had to have made those tweaks in his training camp to beat Josh Emmett, because I really do think Josh Emmett is probably the way to go in this one. I think he's got the wrestling. He's got the ability to push through. Like he's got that ridiculous power on a guy that's been dropped a few times. Granted, it's been by kind of things he doesn't see coming, like usually head kicks. It's a tough one for me. So the way I'm kind of like breaking it down in my head is that the way I see it going, if Josh Emmett takes advantage of Ilya Topuria kind of like having that overconfidence, not having a very solid game plan, I think Josh is going to probably style on Ilya, and it's going to look bad, right? I think Josh, he's fought much better competition despite his age. I think he's still got it in him to come out here and have a great performance, just even with the threat of that overhand right, because it's so powerful. If Ilya, on the other hand, can come in here, pick him apart from the outside, start throwing hard shots when he's on the inside, and avoid that right hand, I think he's got a good chance to make Josh Emmett look silly here. So it's really tough with those odds. It's just so like it should be a lot closer. I do think those odds on Topuria are just kind of ridiculous. Like I have to go with Topuria on this one. I do believe him being the younger fighter, having not necessarily the more likelihood of getting a finish. I think when you have a guy like Josh Emmett and a guy who can get hit like Topuria, odds are Josh Emmett is going to probably find that knockout more often than not. If it is a fight between the Ilya Topuria that fought Bryce Mitchell versus this Josh Emmett, but again, like if Ilya comes in here showing his true skill set, like don't go fucking stupid, he can win this one. Like I see a clear path for Ilya avoiding those shots, picking him apart, hitting the body. Like the guy rips to the body beautifully, and we saw Josh Emmett get hurt to the body by Yair Rodriguez. Granted, it was a hard kick, but I would say that Ilya Topuria's left hook to the body is just as fucking hard, which will eventually open up the body. And I think Ilya's going to get a knockout, either a knockout or a submission that was led to by dropping him. So I'll go with Ilya Topuria round number 3 TKO. So the reason I say round number 3 instead of like round number 1 or 2 is that for him to win this fight, he has to fight intelligently. He has to fight winning rounds, not to get a finish. And that's the biggest issue that I do have with Topuria. He always looks for the finish early. He has to stop that shit, because if Josh is out here like, hey, he's going to do the same thing, you have to mix it up. You have to make Josh fight a way that he's not ready to fight, which would be a very composed Ilya Topuria, a little calmer. So think of Carlos Condit versus Nick Diaz. Like Nick Diaz and the whole world were thinking like Carlos is going to come out here and do his Carlos Condit thing. If Ilya comes out here, not necessarily pussyfooting like Carlos did, which it is what it is, but is more composed, isn't throwing everything into those body shots, like maybe going for his own takedowns, like clinching up, making it a slower fight, I think he's going to have a really good shot. At that point, come round number 3, Josh is like, he's going to do the same thing. I'm not really landing on him because he's kind of using evasive footwork. And that's where I think Ilya can come in here. Bam, bam, like same thing. That's his favorite combination, left hook to the body, overhand right. I think you can find it on Josh Emmett. But again, that is very, very indicative on Topuria to fight defensively and not go crazy. If Topuria goes out there round number 1, starts flailing and going nuts, like I'm going to get him out of here because he's not a threat to me, that's going to be a problem. And I think he's going to get knocked the fuck out. I do envision that fight going, Topuria going nuts in the first round and putting Josh against the cage where Josh is hurt, and Josh, he's going to land something that's going to knock out Ilya, like an overconfident Ilya. That's why I worry so much about this fight. So for me, I think betting wise, take Josh Emmett. Like don't parlay Topuria. Like I'm a huge proponent of Topuria like fighting for the title one day. I really like the guy. I think he's very skilled. He has to show me in this fight that he's ready to fight the elite and fight for the title. And if he fails in that first round, I mean, yeah, we'll see. Because after that, if he doesn't finish or beat Josh Emmett in this fight, I don't think he's going to fight for the title. I think if he loses this fight, it won't be a decision. It's going to be a brutal knockout. So I'll go with Ilya Topuria round number 3 TKO, possibly a submission again if he can hurt Josh Emmett enough to snatch up a I think I mentioned earlier the more likelihood of Josh getting a knockout outweighs Ilya or a finish. But what I wanted to say is that Ilya has more varieties of ways to win with the submission game, chokes, anacondas, like armbar. He's just very solid with his jiu-jitsu. I just think it's not really going to be as effective on Josh Emmett here, being that they're the same size. And, I like Ilya, but I think if Josh Emmett gets on top of him, it could be a bit of a problem in the sense that he can take damage on his way back up to the feet. So yeah, if it stays on the feet, it's going to be incredibly fun while it lasts. I've talked too much about it. I don't know if you can tell, like I really am interested in this one. Like I've thought about it way too often and way too much, but I do think that it's going to be a fun fight. I do think either guy can win, but I'm giving that lean to Topuria. Granted, again, that he comes out here intelligent, which, as much as I like the guy, I don't know if he's showing the best fight IQ sometimes. But again, those are my predictions. Leave a comment, whatever. Johnny Tiger Bomb MMA. Interested in seeing what is the next fight card, because I want to make some money, and I don't really think this is the card for me to make some money. I might just play a couple underdogs, but we'll see what ends up happening. What is the next fight card? Strickland versus Magomedov. Let's take a quick look here. Ooh, Yana Kunitskaya. Yeah, let's go with her. But yeah, Johnny Tiger Bomb MMA. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, blah, 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 blah.